related to concealed carry reciprocity. So dangerous to 64433 will connect you to your representative and give you a little prompt to just let them know this is an issue that you also care about, along with the 20 other issues that we're calling right now.
That's excellent. I hope our listeners take you up on that. And we'll post about it on our Facebook page as well.
And just to say that even though I feel that it's probably going to pass the House the way that the House is set up, we think we have a good chance of stopping it in the Senate. But because there's a lot of Republicans that we're putting pressure on, the law enforcement groups do not want this concealed carry reciprocity. Because if you think about a police officer, you're in Illinois and you stop someone and they have a gun and they say, that's okay, I can carry in West Virginia or I can carry in Florida. There's not really a system set up for police to be able to verify that or to know like, okay, well, okay, so which state allows domestic abusers to carry? Okay, which state allows violent stalkers to carry or not carry? So there's definitely states that have lower standards, and police are not going to know what is what. And so the police, there's many different orders of police that have come out against concealed carry reciprocity. So it's not just us moms. There's also people that are saying this is not safe. And this also, it goes against states' rights. We as Illinois have our specific situation, and these are the laws we've put in place, and you're trying to override those. It's become a states' rights issue.
It's shocking that, perhaps not shocking, I'm getting very cynical. How much Republicans want to talk about states' rights up until it's an issue that they don't want it to be states' rights.
Well, I mean, it's like they want to talk about the deficit when we're trying to give people health care, but they're not interested in getting down the deficit when they're passing tax breaks. I think this would be a good time to talk about Chicago. You two live in Chicago. I lived in Chicago as well. Chicago is like catnip to a lot of the gun rights people that I know in real life. It's like their favorite thing to talk about. Every time we bring up gun violence prevention, they say, oh, but what about Chicago? Because they point to the fact that Chicago has a high rate of gun deaths, despite the fact that Illinois has pretty stringent gun control laws. So let's talk about whether Chicago tells us anything about gun control success.
No, absolutely. And this is a good time to start talking about the kind of actions that we're taking on the state level. And I hope that you'll have a chance to go into more detail about the trace report that just came out a couple months ago about where guns are coming from that are found at crime scenes in Chicago. So, and it's from the crime lab, and it's an amazing report. It's so detailed, and it also clearly shows, first of all, that 60% of guns that are being used in crimes come from outside of Illinois. So right across the border is Indiana, which has much looser laws and the ways they do their background checks than Illinois. So 60% of guns, they're coming from Indiana, but they're also coming from other states, from Missouri. They're coming from the South, where you can buy guns at the gas station and just drive on up to Illinois. Guns are coming from outside of Illinois. So no matter what they say, when they tag on that line of, oh, well, Chicago has strict laws, Illinois has strict laws. Yeah, we do. But the guns are coming from outside of our state. So that's like the first aspect of it. So the second aspect is 40% of the guns come from within the state, but most of them come from these top 10 bad gun stores just outside of the Chicago city border. So it's incredible to look at a map and see, okay, just beyond the city limits, here's this gun store, here's this gun store. The number one bad apple gun dealer is called Chuck's, and the amount of guns that come from that particular store that are then used in a crime within a year, within 3 years, is astounding. And so when you see that these particular guns are coming from these stores, you're saying, what can we do about that? And so that's what we're trying to do in Illinois. There's a particular bill that is moving through the Illinois state called gun dealer licensing, and it's SB 1657.
Yeah, so I mentioned this on a previous episode. I can't actually see Indiana from my house, but I can walk 1 block away and I can look across the lake in Indiana. It is not far away. It is right there. I was trying to think whether there are any other major cities that have direct borders with other states. So in Illinois, you can drive from Indiana. The second you come into Illinois, you are already in the city of Chicago, depending on where you cross the border. And so New York has close by other states. New York City has close by other states, but there's bodies of water in between them. I don't know New York geography to know if that's true everywhere, but again, it's not as big a deal there because New Jersey and Connecticut have similar laws, similar sort of stringency to their gun laws as New York.
Mm-hmm.
So, in Chicago, it's just, and you can drive an hour north of Chicago city limits and be in Wisconsin. It is just not that far away to other states. So, it's not at all surprising to me that the guns are coming from other states. It's upsetting to think about them coming from inside Illinois, but just outside of the city. That even within our own state, there are gun shops set up to get Chicago residents, to go there and to buy the guns. And again, there are legislative ways you could handle things like this. If you live in the city of Chicago and you want to buy a car, you might think, well, I'm going to go out to the suburbs to buy that car because it'll be cheaper. But it won't end up being cheaper for you because you will pay taxes, Chicago city taxes, on that car, whether you buy it in Indiana or you buy it in the suburbs or you buy it in the city of Chicago. You could do the same sorts of things with guns. You could have a really heavy tax on guns that you put on. So no matter where you bought it, if you brought it into the city of Chicago or if you are a city of Chicago resident bringing your gun in, you've got to pay a gun tax. There are ways that you could handle this sort of thing, but you'd have to have a lot better way of tracking all of this, right? You'd have to know who the people are who are getting guns and bringing them into Chicago.
And I especially like that tax because I feel like you could then give it to the schools or something. Like you could do something really cool with the money that you get from the tax.
Yeah, well, it's Chicago. I can't promise you they'd spend the money well, but
And there's so many different ways, and I think there's no gun shops within the limits of the city of Chicago. So there's no gun shops, and that's why people go to the suburbs. And so one of the things is that they've found by looking at how these guns are getting into crime scenes is that it's not like there's a big gun ring where they go and buy 20 guns and then they're selling them, and that it's just, it's one big person or one big gang that's buying all the guns and selling all the guns. It's not even that the gangs are buying guns. It's that legal gun owners, legal FOID card holders are going to gun shops, and it could just be a regular guy, and they're buying 2 guns, and they're keeping one for themselves, and then they just kind of sell that one on the side, and that might be the only thing that they do. And then that gun ends up at a crime scene within a year. And it's happening repeatedly from these particular gun stores. And when they were talking to us about this Chicago Trace report, they were saying it's like the opioid epidemic, in the sense that it's not just one huge drug dealer. It's that someone has a legal prescription for OxyContin. And so they're taking, their amount, and then they're saving a couple pills and giving them to their friend. So it's so hard for them to be able to track. It's individual by individual. It's not just one big network that if they shut it down, then all the guns would be gone.
I still think we need to build a big, beautiful wall between Chicago and Indiana.
Well, if we're doing a lot to combat the opioid epidemic. We're going to be talking about this in an upcoming episode, but we are actually working on that. And one of the ways that we're doing that is trying to monitor patients and prescriptions and make sure that we track prescriptions and we know who is getting opioids from where. So it would seem to make sense, this analogy, that perhaps we could implement a similar, tracking system for guns.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I think that's the simplest thing possible, that you have a national database of gun owners. And, for me, I don't understand why that's a problem. And I think for most responsible gun owners, I think they might begrudge it a little, but they'd be okay with it. It's the most extreme people that are saying, nope, we don't want a national database because then you'll know I have all these guns and then you'll come take them. And at no point has anyone ever said that, we're going to come take your guns. But that mentality has stopped being able to even have computer records of gun sales. You may have seen some recent articles and even videos of where the trace records for guns they're all on paper. There's actually specific laws that prevent any sort of gun ownership papers to be digitized. So when they find a gun at a crime, they have to call up to this huge warehouse and they've got file cabinets and boxes and boxes and boxes, and they have to hand look through paper, which is incredible in 2017 that system is still being forced upon us by the laws that are in place.
There's a good use of our tax dollars.
Oh, definitely.
Wouldn't possibly want to make that, more efficient process. So to your point about, this idea that we're going to come and take your guns, which is so ludicrous. I mean, when has the government ever been efficient and effective at some sort of mass thing like going around and taking guns like that? I mean, it's ludicrous on the face of it. Obviously, I'm highly biased in my feelings about guns, but I find it very difficult to imagine the idea of the government, whatever this even means in this case, city, state, federal, I don't even know, going around and taking guns away from people who have large stockpiles of weapons in their homes. There was a fascinating journal article that came out November 20th, so very recently, in what I believe is a journal called Social Problems. So it's from the Society for the Study of Social Problems. I believe the name of the journal is Social Problems, and it's published by Oxford Academic. And so there's a piece called Gun Culture in Action, and it's just super fascinating. So they use data from the Baylor Religion Surveys to look at people who own guns and look at sort of what subset of gun owners it finds their guns to be empowering. So instead of breaking down gun owners, first by things like race or gender or political orientation, they look at all of those things, but what they're looking at first and foremost is the empowerment that people find in owning a gun, how important that is sort of to their sense of their self. And what they found, which perhaps is not surprising, but nonetheless is good to find sort of scientific validation of, is that white men in economic distress find comfort in guns as a means to reestablish a sense of individual power and moral certitude. It's broken down further to show, often this is people who have less than a Bachelor of Arts degree, so high school or maybe an associate's degree. And these are people for whom they are largely Christian, but largely for whom religion is not super important in their lives, that owning a gun is almost a religious experience to them. Like you could study it as a religious symbol for them. And so I think that plays in a lot to this idea of, they're going to come and take my guns away from me. That, holding on to this idea of having a gun is so important because it's an important part of how they view themselves. And the article, it's, rather lengthy because it's a journal article, and it goes on to sort of break down this idea that these men, who are largely white men, who are experiencing or think they might experience economic distress